Did you know you can still get a picture on the Sega Game Gear TV adapter without a national TV broadcast? In this video, I'm going to show you 4 ways to make it happen, starting from simple cables all the way up to wireless home broadcasting. And for those of you without a Game Gear, this works on similar retro devices such as the analog or portable TVs, and even those TV alarm clock radios you used to get. So let's get started. Before we dive into the methods, let's take a moment to look at this absolute gem, the rare Sega Game Gear Pirate TV Limited Edition. It came, of course, with the console, but also included the all-important TV tuner adapter. Up until this point, most of the Game Gears either just came with the console or with a game such as Super Monaco GP or Sonic. And if you wanted to have the TV adapter, you'd have to buy the separate accessory, which is this one here, the TV tuner pack. And I'll also feature a video I did ages ago which shows all the other available boxed accessories up in one of the corners. So, as you can see, we've got the TV tuner, and this also came with columns as well. We've got this lovely skull and crossbones with the Pirate TV, and there was another edition, I'll pop a picture up now, with like a yellow front, and that came with like a 3-in-1 or 3 games inside there. On the back we can just see some information about it. Really it's just saying that you've got the TV tuner adapter included, which is funny because it says it's got a razor sharp high resolution screen with 32 brilliant colours, and then on the sides you've just got other accessories that were available. In the box, let's have a look. So this one has kind of a bespoke clear lid. So you can see here it has this lid with these 2 grooves that kind of sits in vertically, looks like that. Inside we have the console sitting down here at the bottom. Beneath that we have the copy of columns in its case, and then up at the top in this bespoke housing we have the TV tuner, and you also got a strap as well. In addition to that, you also get the stand. This only came with these versions here, or you'd have to get the TV tuner pack if you wanted that stand for resting the Game Gear up. And this one is in amazing condition. All the paperwork is here and it's all absolutely immaculate. I have never seen so much of this paperwork in this condition like all together. And so the reasons these are quite rare are, first of all, they only released, I think it's around 10 to 50,000 of these, but the boxes weren't as durable as some of the other ones. So they had a different tab design here, which meant that they easily ripped off, and you can see this one's missing these 2 and it has these smaller tabs. So not only were less of these produced, and I think it was a UK only, but their box design meant that these tabs would rip, and then if that would make you more inclined to throw it away. I've fully restored the box, I've pressed it, cleaned it. There was this tear here that I've also repaired, and what I've also done is go in and change all the capacitors on the Game Gear, because that needed doing on this as well. So I've also restored this. So if I pop in a game, I think I grabbed Sonic earlier. So here we go, here's Sonic the Hedgehog. So that's the Sega Game Gear Pirate TV box and its contents. For those of you who are just wanting to know how to hook this up or other retro devices, I hope you're still with me. I just thought it'd be really nice to show off the contents of this rarer console. So now that we've done that, how did it work? Well, back in the day, you'd have your TV tuner like this. You'd insert it just into the back where your game cartridge would go, like this, facing forward with the frequency showing. You would put your aerial up, all the way up, and then what you would do is you would turn your Game Gear on like this, and then you would use this frequency dial on the top to tune into whatever was broadcasting on analog TV signal. And in fact, one of my fondest memories as a kid was being sent to my bed at bedtime and secretly getting out my Sega Game Gear to do just that. And with it being a Game Gear, of course it was backlit, so you could kind of get away with it, with watching it in the dark. And occasionally my mum and dad watched these videos, so sorry Mum and Dad if you didn't know, but I'm sure you probably knew I was watching something on my Game Gear. But since analog TV doesn't exist anymore, at least not in the UK, we're going to have to be a little bit more creative if we want to achieve something like that today. And that's where this video comes in. I'm going to show you 4 ways to achieve it on a TV adapter or similar devices, working all the way up from the simplest and cheapest option, all the way to creating your own pirate TV broadcasting station. Okay, our first method is nice and simple. We're using a basic RF cable here and a 3.5mm to RF adapter that's going to plug directly into the external aerial port on the AC adapter. For those who aren't familiar, and you can see behind me, RF is basically the most old school way we used to connect games consoles up. So what you've got right now is there's a Sega Mega Drive just down there, and it has one of these RF cables. The Sega Mega Drive generates, essentially imagine it's generating its own TV channel, and then you would tune your TV into the channel that the Mega Drive was producing and your game would display on the screen. The flickering is only happening on the video, not in real life, and you actually get a perfectly fine picture on one of these old cathode ray analog TVs. They work really well, and that's why I still have one set up like this in addition to my modern solutions, because I really enjoy playing the old school ways. So that's how it works. You've just simply got an RF cable. So what we do next, as I mentioned, is we have this adapter. It's a 3.5mm adapter, and so what we're going to do is take one end of this, plug it into the console, but then instead of putting it into the television, we're going to attach the adapter onto here like so. And then what you're looking for is our first method of interacting with the TV tuner adapter, and that is, if you look at the top, you've got here external antenna, aerial, whatever you want to call it, is this one down here. So what I'll do now is I'll plug that into the back. This will then be on the Game Gear, and then I'm going to be plugging that into the top. So bear with me 1 second. Okay, so here we are all plugged in, and you can see it's quite a neat solution. Just got the RF cable coming into the adapter, and then it's plugged into the external aerial port on the top. So all we now need to do is turn on the Game Gear and go through the frequencies to find the same one that it was broadcasting to the TV just a moment ago. And the way we do that is, well, first of all, I've got mine set to UHF at the top. You've got a UHF and a VHF, so you'll have to try both of those to find the signal. And then there's a little wheel on the side that moves your mechanism on the inside. Now, one thing I will stress, one of the faults with these is this little orange indicator here. It sits on like a toothed piece of plastic that moves around. So as you're moving this, you're moving these teeth around, and that moves the indicator up and down. And they're really prone to perishing, especially when they've been sat for a while and they're so tightly turned round inside here. So if you just move this really fast and vigorously, you'll risk breaking that and it just won't move anymore. So if you've got a working one, just move this very slowly and very carefully. Unfortunately, if it's broken, that won't move, but you will still be able to tune in with the tuner. You just won't get the indication. So we fire this on now. And I know that it's roughly around this 40 on the UHF. So I'm slowly just going to move along, looking for my frequency until something appears on the screen. I've got the volume down at the minute just to cut out the static, but as we get a little closer, I'll turn it up. So I've just been moving along like this. I can bring the volume now. Slowly moving it along. Starting to get music but no picture, and then all of a sudden, there we go, and you can just try and find the middle of where it comes in and where it goes out. That's going to be your strongest picture. So there we go, and that's Streets of Rage now playing directly from the Mega Drive onto here with that phenomenal soundtrack. And of course, if you're sitting near your device and you've got a controller that's wired in, or in this instance I've got the official wireless controller here, you could actually play the game. So if I went through here, and I'm kind of looking in the camera at the minute, so you can see I can still play the game like so. And of course you can do this for anything that transmits an RF out. I did try it on. Back here there's a combi player, so it's a video DVD output. Tried that, has an RF output. I just didn't manage to get a signal out of it, but you can certainly try in other devices. So method one, that was the RF cable with a 3.5mm adapter. It's simple, it's cheap, it doesn't take up too much room, and if you're already using a setup like this, you'll already have most of it. But you do need a source that outputs RF. So, you know, the original Mega Drive, maybe a combi player, but there aren't a lot of things out there that do transmit RF these days. But that's option number one. Let's move on to method number two. Next up, we're going for composite video, which many of you might recognize. It's this one with the white and the red for audio and yellow for the video signal. And this kind of came after RF. It gives you a much better signal. You'll still find it on things like DVD players, Wii's, N64 I'm going to use as an example. But then after that you had components and HDMI. So more modern, but certainly not modern by today's standards. And so we'll need something that outputs that. So I'll use this N64 lead. And then in order to get it into here, we then need another adapter. And so for this one, it looks like this. So we've got the male, we'll go into the female parts, and it has this 3.5mm jack. And rather than using the external antenna that we used here last time, you can see over there on the other side, we've got AV in, and so we'll be plugging it into there. So give me a moment, I'm going to plug this into the N64, get all this set up, and I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so it's all plugged in now. Basically the same type of attachment as method 1, nice and simple. And we just click it on in this one, and we don't even need to tune it to anything. It will just come on any of these frequencies. So it's just going straight in. You're basically overriding it and saying I want the AV feed. And as you can see, it's much crisper than the RF, and similar to the RF. Again, if you're holding a controller, or in this instance I've got one of the aftermarket wireless ones, you could just like play the game. So you can see here, I can't really see what I'm doing at the minute, but I could just use this as a monitor and be playing the game. So that's method 2. It gives you a sharper image than the RF. You will need this, again, a specific adapter, and then of course a composite video output as well. But yeah, another pretty good wired solution, and that's covered off both of our ports on the adapter. So why don't we move on to method number 3, in which we start to use wireless options. Okay, for method number 3, we're going for the simplest wireless option, and for that we're going to revisit our friend the RF cable, but rather than putting the adapter on and plugging it directly into the tuner, we're now wanting to broadcast a signal. And for that, what we will need is an aerial. So this is a RF output direct to aerial. So here's an example of an aerial that you can buy, and we'll revisit whether or not you need one with a booster or not. So this one has a booster in, and therefore it has a power source. If it hasn't got a power source, it's just going to be a passive aerial that you're putting the signal into, and then it'll broadcast. And sometimes you'll get a fit like this, and other times you'll get a fit like this. And depending on what you've got, you might also need like an adapter of a male to female, or whatever's going to work for your solution. And talking about the booster, this one is a powered one. So what it has, in addition to this connector, is it runs into this thing here that's supposed to give me a signal boost, long range and short range, and then that goes into a power source. So if you just give me a moment, I'll be plugging this in, I'll be plugging that in, and then we'll go back to the signal, the frequency that we had before, and we'll see if we can pick anything up. Okay, so that's all plugged in, and I'm just going from this cable into here using like a double female adapter, and that's now all plugged in, should be transmitting a signal out of here. So if we raise the aerial on the Game Gear, and so now we're going to start having a look for Streets of Rage, which we know is around this frequency. So let's just start tuning. Okay, so here we are, and as you can see, the quality is diabolical. Like, I've been trying to tune this in now for about 20 minutes. I'm holding the aerial up there out of shot. You have like the smallest margin to even pick up the signal, bearing in mind the aerial's there, and it's just the fact the RF signal's so poor that by the time it's gone through an aerial and into the air, it's just completely degraded. And that's with a supposedly boosted aerial, although granted it's small. So perhaps you'll have better luck with a better aerial, a better booster. I've done this kind of as cheap as I can just for the video, and you can see it on there and hear it. But yeah, it is pretty terrible. So it's the simplest method, just taking the RF and putting it straight into an aerial for transmission, but the quality has a lot to be desired, and I certainly can't play one-handed. I mean, if I look at that, as soon as I take my hand off the aerial, we're just losing the signal. So yeah, pretty hopeless, but at least I've demonstrated method number 3, which was wireless. So now let's move on to a slightly better wireless option. So moving on to method number 4, this is going to be the closest thing we're going to get to creating our own pirate TV station that I mentioned right at the beginning. And that's using something that's called an RF modulator. So an RF modulator, instead of the signal going straight into an aerial, it's kind of, I think the best way to be would be more optimized for transmission. So this version here, you can see it's a mini AV to RF. And the way this works, it requires a power source, so the power source will go in here. We've also got a couple of channels we can choose from on here. So there's one that's 61 megahertz and 25. There are other options out there, and they allow you to set a whole range of frequencies. Again, this is just the cheapest one I could find. We have our RF out here. So rather than the signal going straight into here this time round, we'll be plugging the aerial into the modulator, so that'll be going into here. Now, this is where you have options depending on what you're wanting to transmit. So in this one, we're going to go and revisit the composite cable and plug the composite into here, although I'll use something different. But what you can do is you can find ones that have, for instance, a USB out. So you could have something like one of those TV sticks that transmits, you know, it's powered, and potentially it has an HDMI output, and so you could have it into there, or you could have a more modern games console, you put it into there and transmit it. Again, the quality out depends on the quality that you're going to put in to some extent, but it will always be degraded once it's being sent through the airwaves and picked up on one of these. What we'll do for this example is, rather than use another games console, what I thought I'd demonstrate was the combi player down here, and what I'll do is I'll play a DVD rather than a video, and that way we'll probably get the highest source possible out of that setup. So give me a second, I'll get that set up. Okay, so I'm set up. I've got this plugged into the back of the combi player, and I've got the Terminator playing on DVD, and then that's going into my mini AV to RF box here, which I'm now just going to add some power into. And it gives me an option of those two frequencies. One you'll generally find is going to be better than the other once you find the channel. So I've got it on this 67 megahertz. That's now going through to my aerial. So it's time to go and find that channel. Now I know both of them are down here. They don't always correlate, so the megahertz don't necessarily correlate to what it's going to be on here, but I know they're down towards the bottom. So yet again, I'll fire up the Game Gear and start moving my way down towards that end, and hopefully I'll pick up Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to say Terminator 2 is my favourite, but I had Terminator 1 to hand. Straight away we pick up a good signal, and if I change the brightness so you can see it, check that out. So how good's that? And you can instantly see the quality by including the modulator is great. I'll just turn the volume down. So you can get modulators that allow you to go RF in and RF out. And I wondered that if I'd got one of those and plugged the RF cable in first, maybe this box is more about kind of transmitting, whereas on its own, the aerial might just be more about receiving. So this might help. Now, one of the things I found interesting was I initially tried to do this video with one that didn't have a signal booster, and I could hardly get more than like a couple of meters away. So I bought this one with a signal booster, and actually I can get fairly far away. I can walk out the room, I can kind of go down the corridor, and I'm guessing that if you got one with an even better signal booster or one with a better aerial, it might be even better. But the interesting thing is, you can see this here now. If I unplug here the power to the aerial, absolutely nothing changes. So I'm at a bit of a loss as to whether or not it's just the other aerial was poor, or whether or not this signal booster is actually doing anything. Because like I say, if I plug that back in, so this is plugged in now, and it's supposed to apparently be boosting it at short range, and all that happens is if I put it into long range, the signal gets worse. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but either way, I've got a really nice solution here for a wireless signal. I'll just bring you up for a summary of this one. So that was method number 4, and of the options, that gives you the best and most complete method to have a wireless system that works really well, but it is more complex and a little bit more expensive. So mine were kind of like £10 each type thing, but they can get quite pricey, like 20, 30, 40 pounds aerials, boosters. So it is more expensive. You've got to consider what you're going to want to plug in, make sure you get the right adapter, make sure everything's working, make sure your frequencies are right. So it can get more complex, but when you get it right and working, it's a really good solution of them all, and miles better than method number 3. So give me a second, and why don't we just wrap up the video with a summary of everything that we've done. All right, let's quickly finish up the video with a recap. First of all, we had a look at the contents of the limited edition Pirate TV console, and also touched on the fact that you could get the TV tuner pack as a separate boxed accessory. We then moved on to our first method, which was using an RF cable in conjunction with a 3.5mm adapter, and that went straight into the external antenna aerial port and gave us a really good, quick, simple, effective wired option of getting something onto the screen. But RF isn't particularly common, you know, the Mega Drive and a handful of other things. So then we moved on to the component, which was this one here, again with an adapter, and that allowed us to go into the other port, which was the AV in, and again we got a really good crisp picture. No need to tune in with that one either, we had to tune in with the RF one, but that one just goes straight in, and again it works with not super modern devices, but ones that are still, you know, going to be in the house potentially, and that you could use, and gives you more options to broadcast things on, such as like DVD players. Then we moved on to our first wireless connection, because obviously we want Pirate TV, and first of all we just tried to get an RF signal straight into an aerial. So rather than going into here and directly in, it was just being broadcasted here, and it really struggled. It was the simplest way, but even right next to it here and holding the aerial, I hardly had any room to dial anything in, and the signal was terrible. It took me ages to get anything. So unless you potentially upgrade in a better aerial, I think that's probably something to do with it being more of a receiver than a transmitter. And that brought us on to number 4, which was easily the best of the options, well, best wireless option, of course, and that was using an adapter to RF. So in this one here, it was an AV to RF, and I was playing a DVD, but equally down there I could have been playing a video out of there. I could have been attaching my my Wii and use some of the things on there. So whatever you're going to choose in here, and that then I think made it more transmission friendly, and straight away navigating down to one of those frequencies, of which one of them works better for me than the other one, picked up a really nice crisp signal, fairly wide band on the frequency to pick it up. Real nice option, and you can get other ones that have HDMI and other bits and bobs, so whatever's going to suit you. Only thing that confused me was, as I mentioned in the video, unplugging the aerial on this version made absolutely no difference. So it's supposed to be a signal boost, and I thought the signal would get worse. It's still exactly the same, but then the weird thing is I had another aerial previous to this without a booster, and I couldn't get like more than a couple of meters, whereas this one I can walk quite far. And remember, as well as all the pros and cons that I've shown you here, you can apply those to other retro items. So it could be applied to picking up on an old TV like this potentially that has an aerial. You might be trying to just transmit and then pick up on there, or you know, miniature TVs or whatever it is, you know, try it in there. And if you do try any of those options and you're successful and the videos helped, please do let me know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed the content or learnt anything, I'd appreciate it if you like the video or subscribe to the channel if you want to see more retro content. I'll be putting a video up here that you'll probably enjoy. But until the next one, all the best, take care, and see you.